Mecha Break is going into open beta soon, and it is time to go through all the strikers and how they play. This is the first episode out of two. The second episode is coming out tomorrow, which is a day before the open beta starts, so you should have a good idea which striker fits your playstyle. What this video isn't, this is not a tier list. Also very important, I will not take into consideration the balance of the different strikers. There are clearly some differences, as we have already known through the betas, and I will not take that into consideration. What I will explain you here is what to expect from a striker, how the striker plays, so you can just immediately choose the right striker which will probably fit your playstyle and jump directly into the game. With that said, let's begin. Falcon is the first one, and Falcon is a light attacker. And what that means is Falcon is very maneuverable, has a lot of burst potential, and if I want to compare this to a MOBA or an RPG, Falcon is more like an assassin type player, right? You are diving into the backlines of the enemy team, picking out the weak strikers and take them down, and then get out of there before the enemy team can react, or at least that's the idea, depending on the team, of course. But as I said, Falcon's strength is maneuverability and the burst potential, which means that when you used all your abilities on one striker, your damage potential is going down and you have to wait on the cooldown. So the best idea here is to jump in, do some devastating damage, jump out, wait till everything is up again, jump in again, because your sustainability is getting in and out as fast as possible without being caught and not necessarily staying too long around. Falcon is also a hard counter to Narukami because you have a scan which is showing you all the invisible mechs or strikers around you, but we will get to that when we are talking a little bit more about Narukami. Second, Panther, your medium brawler. And Panther is definitely one of the strikers I do not necessarily recommend to new players, not because his playstyle is problematic, like you are purely a melee fighter, so that means you do not have range attacks, but you have a crazy fast maneuverability, and you have also abilities to close the gap to your target. And what Panther is doing is normally you are going in with your normal melee strike, right? Not the lance, but your energy sword. And then when you attack an enemy like 2 or 3 times, you will immediately use the lance to do some extra damage on them, or most of the time kill them, or at least move them out of the bulk of enemies because you displace and stun the enemy when you hit them with the lance. Why is Panther a problem? Well, first of all, hitting the lance is quite tough, right? Like it's definitely needs a little bit of a learning curve, but also the biggest problem for Panther is energy distribution. You have an energy problem with Panther, and you have an ability which is allowing you to also regenerate energy and regenerate your shields. And you have those specific upper shields which also protect you from other attacks and range attacks, and you have to know when to use your front shield, when to use your upper shields, when to regenerate your energy. It takes quite a bit of training to get to the point where you will be good with Panther. So that means this would just take a little bit of time. But if you are somebody who loves to tinker around and who doesn't really mind to get, bullied in the first few games, then Panther is definitely the choice for you. Aleseness. Aleseness is, of course, the tutorial striker, and I know that a lot of people always think, Aleseness, not so great, it's boring. Aleseness is actually a very, very strong striker because Aleseness has a lot going for them. And the first one is you have multiple lives, right? When you are losing all your health, you will not be destroyed, but you are just losing your armor, and now you are vulnerable. Yes, you can still shoot, you can still attack, and you can use that extra health to maybe finish off a target. Then you can call in your armor again. Keep in mind, you can only do that one time. You cannot regenerate it. You have one chance. And while you're calling in the armor, you will be unattackable. Well, people can still attack you, but they will do no damage to you. But you also cannot move. And there is the split moment where this invincible field will disappear, but you still cannot move. So please don't try to do that in front of the enemy, because you're also vulnerable for a second or so, and the enemy can literally use that to strip you of the armor you just called in, or does a lot of damage to you. And then even if you lose that armor again, you are still in the vulnerable state again, and you can utilize that. Like, again, you have quite a bit of health because of that. But that's not the only thing which makes Elysinus actually a crazy all-rounder. It's because you have everything. You have range weapons. You have a melee weapon, which, by the way, don't forget, melee weapons do circumvent the fluid armor, aka the shields on the strikers. And you have burst potential. So you have sustainable damage, burst, lots of life, and you are also quite maneuverable. Energy management still is, though, a problem of Elysinus, and no, not like Panther, you don't have an ability which gives you energy back, so you have to manage that, and this is where most Elysinus players fail at the beginning. They manage their energy wrong, and then they're getting destroyed. But Elysinus, the moment you figure that out, is really, really strong. Tricera, the first ultra heavy defender, or as you would call it in other games, a tank. Literally. Well, not quite, but pretty similar. Tricera is basically the result of the developers looking at Overwatch, looking at Bastion, and go, what if we give Bastions 4 Gatling cannons, more shields, more repair, and a bigger cannon? And everyone was just like, yeah, good idea, let's do that. And that's the result of Tricera. As I said, Tricera is very tanky, very slow, lots of health, lots of energy shields. And when you were going into turret mode, you will also deploy energy shields around you, which have their own health. And more importantly, they cannot be circumvented by melee weapons. So they have to break through those shields first before they can actually attack your normal shield and your health, while you can use your 4 Gatlings and your Howitzer to do quite a bit of damage. Now, the downside of Tricera is positioning is key. When you are going into your turret mode, you are sitting duck, right? Like, you are sitting there and you want to support your team, but you also want to play the objective, and you want to make sure that you can actually hit the enemy. So positioning and knowing where you have to be with Tricera is really, really important. You can also send out a repair drone, which is then starting to heal you. Keep in mind, though, it doesn't repair shields, right? Only health. So Tricera is, like, a lot of people are overestimating the tankiness and the damage of Tricera, so they're putting themselves into unfavorable position. And Tricera is definitely not a burst character. It's more sustainable damage, and it would take quite a while till you have taken somebody down, but because you are also a tank, that's okay. But again, positioning, knowing the maps is very important for Tricera to draw the attention of the enemy towards you. Narukami, the light sniper. So this is a little bit misleading. I know that a lot of people immediately think, oh, light sniper, so that means Narukami doesn't do as much damage, right? No, the light is not referring to the weapon. The light is referring to the striker. So that means you are a light striker, which means maneuverable, but not a lot of health, not a lot of shields. Your weapon has nothing to do with that, because Narukami has actually the highest single target weapon shot in the game fully charged. Yeah, that's right. If when you are going into sniping mode, you still have to charge your weapon, so it would take a little bit till you're doing full damage. And also very important, if you want to snipe, you have to be on a surface. So that means you have to be on a building, on the street, or somewhere, or you can use your grappling hook ability to grapple to a wall, and then you can still use the snipe. But again, Narukami very much lives of positioning because you don't really have like a lot of defensive abilities. And I say that knowing that Narukami has an invisible field, can also create a clone, and can make itself invisible, right? And so that is a lot of options to escape. But the moment good players realize where you are and who you are, things are getting problematic. And I mentioned this earlier, right? Especially when you are fighting against a Falcon, you are in a pickle because Falcon can just use its scan, and they can see you. They can see the real Narukami, and so all your abilities just go up in smoke, and you will probably be destroyed. But again, if Narukami is left alone, you can do some dangerous damage on especially the light strikers, which is your first target. Taking out the supports, taking out the lighter attackers, and all that before you're trying to shoot down one of the more heavy strikers. Lumine, the light support. Lumine really relies on maneuverability, and Lumine has basically no defense potential. Yes, you have a few abilities you can use, which might buy you the time you need that your team is actually protecting you, but you are first and foremost a pure healer. You are there to support your team and to heal as many of the strikers as possible. And so, again, positioning is very important. Make sure that the other strikers are not getting to you and your team is aware that you need help. Because even though you have a corruption state, which transforms your healing into damage over time effects, if they haven't buffed that, it is not good. Like, even a Falcon would take 30 seconds to be destroyed by Lumine, and you will not survive 30 seconds against a Falcon if your team is not helping you. So again, your priority is definitely the healing and getting quickly out of bad positions, but you don't really have anything else to help you to survive for a long time. So keep that in mind. Last but not least, Vulcan, the heavy brawler. Vulcan is strong. Now, to make this very clear, Vulcan is not a tank. What you like to do is you observing the battlefield. You see when you have multiple weaker targets standing together or even supports, and that is where you are jumping in. Because you can also do spin to win and do some whirling around with your big axe, doing a lot of AoE damage. And your defense capabilities are relatively low. Again, you are not a tank. You can take some beating. You can definitely do a 1 versus 1 or 2 versus 1, but you are not the primarily target, right? You don't want to be that. And the strongest ability Valken really has and brings to the table, which is also good for objective play, is clearly his arena, which is also called the stasis shield, right? You are putting like a big shield around you, and nothing can leave or enter that shield. Well, besides of attacks, like energy attacks can still go in there, right? But that means enemies are trapped in there with you for a few seconds. And you can also use that to keep other strikers away from certain objectives and so on. So it's a very strong ability, which needs a little bit of finesse, right? You don't want to necessarily trap one of your supports like Lumine in that shield while you are fighting in there, and then they are all going on Lumine. That's not really what you want. But again, if you look for a striker which can definitely take some beating, but also can dish out quite a bit of sustainable damage, then that is your striker to go. Also, good news, you're not just a melee fighter, you also have a heavy or an assault howitzer, and that means you have some range attacks to defend yourself. With that said, that doesn't mean that you are a range fighter. It's more like a doing extra damage slash the last resort if you need to. But with that said, we're at the end of the first part of the Strikers of Mecha Break. I hope you enjoyed the video. The second part is coming out tomorrow, so check that out. I will probably cross-link the two videos with links in the video description. And if you're new to the channel, you want to see more Mecha Break, I would appreciate if you might leave a like and also subscribe to the channel. With that said, have a good one, stay safe,